So let's get right into it. Why you sabotage yourself the moment things get good? You know, many of us have experienced this. We build momentum, we can be uber disciplined, we're competent, we know who we are ambitiously, we know that, we could go fuck life and get what we want. That's who we are. And we know that, we're dogs, right? But anytime that you finally reach the point when you're finally gonna win, you find a reason to fuck it up. The same way you view yourself as a dog, there's parts of you that view yourself and say to yourself, nah, you know what? All the things we've been working for, we don't really deserve them. So you find a way to fuck it up. This isn't a discipline problem, it's an identity problem. The way you view yourself, yes, part of you does see yourself as disciplined, as competent, as ambitious, but there's a larger voice running your internal system screaming at you the thoughts that you run away from telling you that you're an imposter, that you are a fraud, meaning that you're not the man who can live up to the lifestyle that he's actually building. So when you're pursuing what you want, your identity, the man that you are, you don't feel like you could sustain being that man. So, despite seeing yourself in glimpses where you could sustain success for a certain amount of time, internally, you don't actually believe you can sustain being the man that you need to be to get everything you want. Therefore, you could build your way, grind your way to certain accomplishments, but deep down inside, you don't believe you deserve it because you think of yourself as a fraud. You don't think of yourself as the man you know you are. You may even have accomplishments right now and you still feel like there's something lacking, something missing. It's a hollowness that only people who've lived it can describe. So you don't fall off when life gets hard, you fall off when life gets good. This was me during my detailing business. I was fat, I was comfortable on the outside. That's what I looked like. But I was extremely competent. I was extremely, respected, especially for my age. I was about 19 during the time of this picture, maybe even going on 20. And I would have periods where I was able to lock in and just win, but then I would always burn out and always slip back completely, which is what led to me even looking fat and being fat here, because all the internal pressure, internal tension made me go back to who I was. So let's actually read what's on hand. You lock in for 7 to 14 days, right? I know you've been here. Then a win happens, a compliment, a good check, attention from a woman, progress in the gym, and your brain says, see, you're fine, relax. That's where you fuck up. Not in the hard moments, in the good ones. So you begin to associate every time you win with you being too complacent, you being too comfortable. So now, anytime you succeed, there's a sense of bracing, there's a sense of relief, but you already know there's a sense of fear that, if I win, I'm not sure if I could hold it. If I win, I'm gonna get too comfortable, and I'm gonna lose my edge, and then I'm gonna fuck it up, and you start to panic. And this panic keeps you stuck in the same cycle, locking in for 7 to 14 days, crashing out, or seeing a win, crashing out, going back, going backwards, and then doing it all over again. You don't disappear when life is hard. You disappear when life is good because you don't believe you deserve the success that you've been working towards. Okay. And see, you make your own cycle worse because I'm sure after you fall off, you think to yourself, I need more discipline and, I need more. I need to be more locked in. Fuck everybody. You go into performance mode and you begin to shit talk yourself and shame yourself and create all this internal pressure. Now your 7 to 4 day lock-ins are turning into 2 to 3 day lock-ins, burn out for the rest of the week. And next thing you know, you're a full, completely shell of yourself and you don't know who the fuck you are anymore. That's this guy right here. That's me, right here. That's exactly how I was. I started my business when I was 18, really. That's when the idea was inspired by the Most High. It took me a year and a half to actually move forward, because I would constantly get in my own way. Began to gain weight because I had collapsed, not knowing who I was anymore. But now I was building a business and building my foundation off of that. So I built this business. I felt like a business owner, but when the business was doing bad, I was doing bad. When the business was doing good, I was doing good. And when you live like that, it's so emotionally up and down, that when you win, you lock in, but when you fall down, everything becomes so much harder to move. Okay. And when you tell yourself, like, things like that, that's not rest. Oh, you see, you could relax, you're fine, that's a permission thought. And ignore this right here. I fucking forgot to do the spell check, whatever. You don't consciously choose to fall off. You give yourself permission in subtle ways. These are your actual internal words. I've earned a break. One day off won't matter. I can afford to relax right now. I'll get serious again tomorrow. And you begin to procrastinate because you believe momentum is something you can turn off whenever you want, but it isn't, because the momentum that you built is just an excuse. The momentum that you've built, sorry, the permission thoughts is just an excuse to run away and avoid everything that you've been building towards. See, when you're building towards something, yes, there's moments where you sprint and you take an intentional rest. The problem is that you're not resting. You're giving yourself permission to go back to who you used to be so you don't get what you want. Okay. This affects your relationships with women. This affects your business. When you start making more money, suddenly it's like, oh, okay, you know I'm good now, but then you don't actually ever sustain an income that's sustainable. That was what would happen to me, is that I would make income. I would make a quick, $2,000, $2,500, the $900 in a day, but then it'd be like, all right, let me chill out the rest of the week. It wasn't because I needed the rest. It was because I wanted permission to stop feeling so much fucking pressure. And that's really what I was looking for. But see, the catch 22 is that because I wouldn't work, I would give myself a lot of days off. The problem with that was that it would put me in the same cycle of having a, okay, fuck it, now I gotta turn it back on, and now that is shit is unsustainable. It's very unsustainable because now you're always playing life behind. Oh fuck, I only got a certain amount of money in the bank. Now I have to go make money. And the thing is, you're so competent that you actually could do it. You know what I mean? You could actually just turn it on and go get results, and then turn it off. But the problem is that you're never consistent. You're inconsistent, and you look at yourself as inconsistent, and that's what fucks with your head more. So anytime you say these things, you already know you're not really asking for rest. You're asking for permission to get away from the pressure that you're putting on yourself. But that creates more pressure down the line, because just like relief, just like a drug addict, you get a quick hit to stop grinding or to stop building, but then you never actually move forward in life. You stay stuck in the same cycles. You know, you don't collapse because you're weak, you collapse because it got real. The win created visibility. Visibility created responsibility. Responsibility created a version of you you don't trust to sustain. So your nervous system did what it was trained to do. It reverts back to the safest version of yourself. You didn't lose discipline. You didn't have the identity to hold the success. So this is what you think is happening, right? What he thinks is happening: laziness, lack of willpower, lost motivation. What's actually happening: identity collapse, nervous system reversion, fear of sustaining the win. So now this happened to you one time. You got progress in the gym. You said, fuck it, now I'm gonna go eat whatever the fuck I want. You crash out for the weekend, or you crash out for 3 days. You gain weight. Your nervous system now is starting to say to itself, fuck, like, I don't really trust myself. So now I'm afraid to actually win, because every time I do, I fuck it up. Okay. See, the problem is that when you told yourself, like, oh, I need a break, I need a rest, you go back to the version of you, right? You go back to the version of you when you were a kid, or whatever, that goes chasing relief. Really, you have to look at these outlets as relief. For me, it's food. Like, to this day, like, I'll overeat. I'm a stress eater, right? When I don't feel safe, when my nervous system doesn't feel safe, it starts craving food, it starts craving sweets, it starts craving sugar. That's what's my own pattern. Some men is drugs, some men is going to smoke weed. you know you think you're lazy, you think you lack the willpower. No, you cannot out discipline a nervous system that does not feel safe. And then see, that creates your cycle of now, fuck, now you have this story. Fuck, I was grinding in the gym, and 14 days I was locked the fuck in, I felt unstoppable. But now, fuck, man, I fucked it up, and now there you go, same cycle over and over and over again. You cannot sustain your discipline, quote unquote. You think you're moving in alignment, but you're not. You're willing yourself to do shit that you don't really want to do. If you're being honest with you, you think that life is supposed to be suffering and building success is supposed to be suffering. Now you collapse because you have this version of yourself that you see in your mind, right? And now your nervous system doesn't feel safe, so it goes back to who? The kid version of you, the safest version of yourself. Now, because that's happened, you've seen yourself do this, you fear sustaining the win. Now you create this story. Oh, I was locked in for 6 months, but then I lost it all. You lost your motivation. You never lost your motivation. Your entire sense of self collapsed. Your nervous system reverted you back to who you used to be, and now you're afraid to win. Ain't that a bitch? You have to define who you are, right? What does the greatest version of you look like? For me, what does the greatest version of Hernan look like? Okay, well, the greatest version of Hernan, he's a man of the Lord. What does that look like? He expresses himself, what he's learned from the Bible, through all his work. That makes my life easy because it's not me trying to prove anything no more. This is me just expressing who I am, and my nervous system, will feel the difference. Pressure, performance creates pressure. Expression creates outlets of you being who you are. Okay, if that makes sense. you know I built a business at 19 and watched myself destroy it. Okay, I had the esteem, I had the respect. I would get compliments all the time. Oh, wow, wow, you're 19 and you're doing what you're doing. I didn't start running a business until X, Y, and Z. Older clients respected me before I respected myself. On the outside, competent. On the inside, how do I stay being him? What if this was real? I wasn't failing, I was succeeding, and I didn't have the identity to hold it. So I reverted to the safest version of myself and dismantled everything I built. Not because life got hard, because it got real. I was able to execute under pressure. Okay, that was not the issue. I was under a lot of pressure during that time. If you guys know portions of my story, I dropped out of college so that way I could focus on the business, and I couldn't get a job during that time for you know let's just say during that time, the world was under extreme conditions where if I got a certain I got the juice. I was not allowed to get a job, but I wasn't willing to get the juice, so I had to create my own motherfucking job, or I had to create my own income. So if you guys get that, you guys get it. If not, you don't. Okay, so once I was on the spotlight, I thought that I was gonna like finally be seen as respectable, which I was. But now the pressure was, how do I actually stay being this version who carries himself as an authority? How do I actually stay being this leader that everybody's seeing me to be? Like now, I finally proved to my family that I am the man that I've always thought of myself to be. I finally, one, I proved to them like, see, I could be an entrepreneur. But see, now I was in the spotlight. Now it wasn't just about like, you know, how do I prove it? I had finally gotten to the mountaintop. It was more, how do I stay being him? And I've always mentioned that proving something or getting something is much easier than sustaining something, because you have to sustain the frequency of the man that you now are. And during that time, I did not understand that. I didn't realize that, it wasn't just changing who you are for a season, it was changing who you are for the rest of your life so you could handle the responsibilities that you were looking for. You don't just get one win and then your life changes, one breakthrough. That's not how it works. It's multiple breakthroughs along the way that compound to make you the man that you need to be, so that way you could have everything you want. Okay. Even with my prayer life, if I'm being blunt with you guys, my prayer life doesn't look like me asking the Most High for things. It looks like me asking the Most High to be the man who could handle what I'm asking for. Okay, that's a tip right there. You know, the problem isn't the relapse, it's what it triggers. Permission talks. Success feels like proof you're fine. Again, you're fucking you're disciplined in the gym 14 days, then it's like fuck it, I could eat this, I could eat that. Fine means relax, relax means disappear. See, you're not intentionally resting. You're burned out and you're lying to yourself about being burned out. You think you need more willpower, but no, that's not the case at all. Identity gap. The disciplined version and the comfort version are two different men. You cannot sustain the one you respect. Okay, so for you, you may have a version of you at the gym. May have a version of you at work. You may have a version of you when you're by yourself. You may have a version of you. You're not the same man across the board. You're not congruent. So now, you're putting on these different faces, and now you feel like, you have to sustain being a certain version of you in different rooms, and that is fucking exhausting. That is exhausting. That will drain your energy more than anything. You see yourself as this type of man, but you're not actually moving like that type of man. You're not integrated, you're fractured, you're misaligned, okay? So you have multiple different versions of you that you're running. And like the scripture says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. You're leaking so much energy trying to be something that you're not. That's the best way to describe it. You're trying to be something that you're not instead of being something that you are. Okay, you see the disciplined version of you as a different man. You see the comfort version of you, the version that you don't like, as a different man, not realizing that that is you. Okay, and the one that you want to be, the man, the version of yourself that you want to be, the one that you actually respect, you can't access him because you're still split. You're still running different personalities in different rooms, and you're still seeing yourself as a different man in different environments. You go to the gym and all of a sudden you're this disciplined guy, but you go home and now all of a sudden you're the guy who only seeks comfort. You know how exhausting that is to be switching between those type of identities. You know what I mean? So you're wasting energy doing that, keeping up the act, rather than, you know, the discipline side of you. The gym is where you express it. You also express that at the house, though. I'm sure you do when you're on top of your nutrition, you're on top of your business, etc., etc. That is who you are. That's not like this other mask of you. And that's something that I had an issue with. I would feel like in the gym, I'm this bold, confident guy, but then all of a sudden I'd go to certain environments, go approach women. All of a sudden I was a bitch. So I would be like, how the fuck am I XYZ so intense in this area of my life, but I'm not in other areas? Why do I carry myself so confidently here, but I don't, that confidence doesn't carry across the board? And that's really when I started to begin what was self-belief and what was confidence. Confidence says, I'm very competent at this one thing. Self-belief says that I'm competent across the board because that's who I am. And when you begin to see yourself as that way, even if you're not necessarily good at something, your self-belief shines through everything that you touch. Okay, everything that you do. You'll walk into a room and you may not even be the most skilled person there. Let's say like you're on a basketball court, but you're the most willing to make himself look like a fool so you could actually become great at what you want to become. And that self-belief radiates through you, okay? And that's when you become fully integrated, you've become whole. When there's no longer different versions of you, it's just you allow different environments to express who you are rather than those environments allow you to be who you want to be in that moment, if that makes sense. Okay, certain environments shouldn't trigger certain parts of you. Okay, you should be able to turn it on and turn it off. Okay, so something that I've heard before is that people leave their hometown, go to another town, move to another state, and all of a sudden they become this different person. But as soon as they go back home, they revert back who they used to be. Why? Because their foundation, their identity, the man who they are, who they say they are, was dependent on the environment. It's not who they became. So the environment made the man, not the man make the environment. Okay. And nervous system reversion, your system was never trained to stay regulated under success, only under pressure. So peace feels like danger. You won now, okay? But you never actually acknowledge those wins. Is now, okay, what's the next round? What's the next mission? Oh, you don't know how to celebrate. And when you win, there's no more pressure. You're no longer chasing. You're actually sustaining, and the peace and the quietness, it drives you fucking crazy. So what do you have to do? You have to create a new challenge, a new enemy, and you're constantly feeling behind. But feeling behind feels safe to you because feeling behind is all you've ever known. And now this tension that you've won is gone. So you don't know how to act, you don't know how to be, you don't know how to steward. You only know to hustle. And when you're constantly hustling, you're burning more energy than you need to because now you always feel on edge. Your nervous system becomes, very taxed, and now you're in survival mode, and it's limiting your ability to actually thrive the way you want. You think you need the pressure when in reality is you don't know who you are without the pressure. So you cannot out discipline a nervous system that was never taught to hold success. That's basically what you're saying to yourself when you don't allow yourself to sit with the peace of actually winning. Okay? You're saying to yourself, well, fuck, every time I win, I don't know if I could actually sustain it. So let me fuck it up again so that way I could go back to chasing. You don't actually know what it is to like actually just chill out with the win. And that's exactly why your nervous system goes back to who you used to be, back to the man who was always chasing, back to the guy you weren't really happy with. You don't need more discipline. You need an identity that makes the old version of you impossible. What doesn't work? More information. You don't need more information. You don't straight up. You don't even need to go on YouTube and watch more fucking, how to create irresistible hooks, or new workout plan, new workout. No, you don't. You already have all the information you need. Let's stop lying to yourself. You don't need motivation. That I don't even know what the fuck motivation is, to be honest. Willpower, you have a great amount of that. That shit is like a sword. Only take it out when you need to. Restarting the same plan. You don't need to restart the same fucking plan, okay? Like, stop lying to yourself. You know that shit work. The only reason you feel like you need to restart it is because when you restart, it gives you that what? Motivation. Life is very fucking simple and boring. The pressure, the edge, you don't need it. What does? Closing the identity gap, building capacity to stay regulated under winds, making congruency the baseline, not the goal. Into the man you're becoming stops being more comfortable than the man you are. You always choose potential over proof. Most of you guys like the idea of your potential, okay? You don't actually see yourself actually fulfilling your potential. You guys ever notice that shit? And you chasing this image of yourself, you know, you're creating this gap between who you are and how you're showing up. So now you never create proof, and you chase your potential through these outlets, through a business, through physique, through women, through you know through social rooms with other men, okay? You never build the capacity because your nervous system knows, your body knows that you're lying. You're lying. You don't actually believe in yourself the way you think you do. And the way we close the identity gap is when your actions and your words and the things you actually want to do begin to align, which is why it's so important to define who you want to be as a man. How does the best version of you move? How does he talk? How does he speak? How does he act? How does he think? Okay? Because then you're going to realize when you write this out, which is what we will be doing in the program, is holy shit, I'm already him. It's just that I don't know actually how to sustain being him. So we make congruency your baseline where you're the same man in every single room, which is going to build the capacity for you to actually handle the wins that you want, which is going to close the gap between who you're showing up as and who you know yourself to be. You go from becoming to I am. Okay? You're not a man who can't stay disciplined. You're a man who doesn't trust himself to stay him. The loop doesn't break because you try harder. It breaks when your identity stops giving you permission to fall. Okay? What does this mean? You're a very reactive to life, and this is not something that you know. You think that because you're grinding and you're being disciplined and you're going after the things that you want in your life, that that's going to make you the man that you've always seen yourself to be. That's not true. No matter how much income you have, no matter how many women you have, no matter X, Y, and Z, you cannot depend on external things, earthly things, to bring out the man that you know yourself to be. There's a certain vision that you have of yourself, the best version of yourself, per se. But you think you need women to give you permission to be that, to be the bold, confident guy. I used to fall into that loop all the time where, I would act like, this witty guy with women, but then, I'd act different with other people. You know what I mean? And really, I was looking for the women to give me permission to be that part of me, instead of being able to turn it off and on. And I'd say to myself, no, I'm really witty, I'm really XYZ, but I don't understand why I can't turn it on with other people. It's because I was looking for women to be able to turn that on. When I lost the business, I stopped feeling authoritative. I stopped feeling like, a man with conviction. I was looking for the title of a business owner, right? To give me authority, conviction, and confidence and self belief, when in reality was, I created the business. So therefore, I believe in myself because I'm able to do things like keep my fucking word to myself, which is really the most important thing a man should do, was keep his word to himself so he could trust himself. Okay. And now I don't need a business to know who the fuck I am. Honestly, guys, I don't need to be doing this. I don't even need to be making these presentations. You know what? Like, it's great, but the man that I am, I can go anywhere and succeed. And that's the level that I want to take you guys to, where you trust yourself everywhere. And what you'll find out is that most of the things that you've been chasing for in your life, they built on a foundation of people pleasing, of performing for others. Okay. When you start choosing who you want to be instead of making life choose for you, you're gonna find out a lot of the things that you were doing was for the wrong reasons. Okay? It's not gonna, the loop won't break when you try harder. It breaks when you choose who you want to be as a man. At your core, who are you? And who do you want to be? Okay? And that's it for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. Like and comment. Leave a subscribe. This is gonna be the first presentation that I do. As I'm gonna make a couple announcements. I am building out a program. It will be the 1% Man, because here on this channel, you will be built into a 1% man, and it's not gonna be built from fucking having a lot of money, having a lot of women. I love all those things, but those are all expressions of who I am. They don't make me. I make them. Okay? The Lord made me. And now, when you understand the Most High and that He's a creator and He put that creative spirit into you because you're a man, now I'm a creator myself as well. Okay? So we, as men, we create our reality because we were given the power to do so. Okay? That is who we are. And that is the way of the 1% man. And that's only if you allow yourself to be 1%. Most men play life reactive. We don't play life reactive. We create life.